Have you ever had your spouse flip out on you? For some, it's the occasional thing, and others turn it into an art form. This is Funny Like a Clown Podcast. I'm your host, Dennis Wirth, June 15th, 2021. This is episode 113. Thank you for joining me. Hey, if we're going to talk about someone who made flipping out into an art form, who better to discuss today than Mr. Flip Wilson? That's who we'll be discussing. As always, today's episode is brought to you today by G Vegas Buffalo Sauce. For the spicy, sweet, savory taste at game time, there's only one G Vegas. Now go to www.gvegas.webs.com, order some up, get it shipped to your house. It's lightning in your mouth, baby. Buffalo macaroni and cheese. It's become one of my favorites. Flip Wilson probably like a good buffalo macaroni and cheese. Did some TVs in the 60s and 70s. I guess mostly remembered the host of the Flip Wilson Show with his most famous reoccurring character, Geraldine. And I remember I remember back in grade school, that was like one of the jokes. Don't be a Geraldine or hey Geraldine or something. It was a catchphrase of the time. Everybody would use that. And I guess that's where it originated. Geraldine was from the Flip Wilson Show, one of his many iconic characters. The show won a Golden Globe and 2 Emmys for its time. Highest rated show on that television station at the time, and was noted as the first African American artist to host a successful variety show. And when you're the first to do anything, that means you're paving new ground. And it was different times back then. Okay, it was much harder for an African American to bust into the business than it is today, where you got the Chris Rocks and the Dave Chappelles who were at the top of the game. Well, back then it was a different dance, man. Okay, there weren't the opportunity. They had to work twice as hard to be half as successful. 1972 Time Magazine put him on the cover and named him TV's first black superstar. Which times have come a long time since then, as I've said, but back then this guy's breaking new ground. 1970, his comedy album The Devil Made Me Buy This Dress won a Grammy Award, and that's a long forgotten art right there. The comedy album, okay, because as kids, you couldn't wait to buy the hot comedy album and hide it under your pillow, and your friends came over and where's mom and dad in the backyard? Let's pop it in. Well, let's turn it down low so they don't get mad. And and just you and your friends, after listening to these comedy albums, like everything during that day that you guys did would be a reference from that comedy album. Okay, you'd be shooting quotes at each other and the references would be flying everywhere. That's how good they were. And with the downloading today, you can't do it anymore. But we're getting the Netflix specials now. That's the new thing, and the Amazon Prime specials. But hey, this guy's winning Grammy awards. Okay, let's see. Later on in his career, in 1984, hosted People Are Funny, a revival of the show. 85, 86, he was on the sitcom Charlie and Company. How did he get started? He came from a broken home. I guess his mother took off. His dad, back then, dads, they weren't the stay-at-home dads that they are today. They worked and made the bread, and I guess raising 4 kids, it was just too much. So he put them into foster care, probably wanting a better life for them. He bounced around foster care for a while. At 16, he lied about his age so he could join the Air Force, and got into the Air Force at age 16 by lying about his age. And he became an instant hit with the troops, his outgoing personality. And I guess he had a bunch of stories, I guess, from being in foster care, and just he'd make the stories funny. Made him very popular around the barracks. He became so popular, he was asked to go on tour to other bases to try and cheer up the troops, because if you can make people laugh, that's a great thing. They say laughter is the best medicine. So, if you're down because you're in the Army or you're going to war or something's got you wrong, that's why, the USO's there, okay? Because you got to cheer up the troops, man. Because all they see in there is war, and you need a break from war, you need a break from reality, and that's why there's comedy shows to give you a laughing break from whatever's got you ailing you, whatever's got you down. So he's touring bases, cheering up the troops with his stories. I guess he was noted for always being flipped out. Like this guy, man, 24/7. This guy's flipped out. That got him the nickname around the base as Flip, which of course he later turned into his stage name. That's how he became Flip Wilson, by being known around the Army bases as being flipped out. So he's got his stage name. Got out of the Army in 1954. He started working as a bellhop in San Francisco at a hotel. I guess the nightclub to earn some extra cash when he wasn't busboying. In between the scheduled acts, he'd go up on stage, when they take a break and people getting a drink or using the restroom, and he'd start playing a drunk. Okay, he'd play like a drunk patron, and people would be wondering, like, is this part of the act here, or is this like a drunk guy, getting upset in between shows here who had too much to drink? But the character became so popular that he started performing in nightclubs all over San Francisco, this drunk guy that he was doing. So apparently he was very good at playing the drunk guy. And he became, he was first just ad-libbing. Just, he'd go up on stage, earn a few extra bucks to start acting like a drunk. But the more popular he get, then he started writing routines. Okay, so he'd ad-lib part and put in routines for the other part. And that's when it really started to take off and become a phenomena. By the 1950s and 60s, he was touring regularly in nightclubs with black clientele mostly, because back then it wasn't like everybody goes to the same club. Blacks went to one club, whites went to another club. This was the era. World's come a long way since then. But I guess the circuit was called the Chitlin Circuit. Okay, they had a circuit of black clubs where the performers that were black could go to and perform for black audiences. And by the 1960s, I guess he had done so good on the circuit, he became a regular at the Apollo Theater in Harlem, which the Apollo is one of the iconic theaters in Harlem, where if you had a talent and you were from the hood and you're looking for a break, well, the Apollo, that's the place that you could get your break in, okay, because that's where the major stars were being found down in Harlem, where you either want to be a hood or you want to be in entertainment. What do you want to do? If you wanted to be entertainment, you went to the Apollo, but it wasn't an easy place to get into. He was doing so good. I guess he started to catch the eye of some people. Big break came for him. He was on Johnny Carson's Tonight Show. We've discussed this before. Carson's Tonight Show, if you're on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson back then, you were an instant phenomena, because that was the only place people had access to comics. So the second you were on there, you're automatically headlining every club in America because you're a known act then, okay? But it was not easy to get on the Tonight Show. The best of the best was having trouble getting on the Tonight Show. But in 1965, who was the best of the best? Red Fox, okay? He was the popular comedian back then. He was on Carson's Tonight Show. Carson asked him, who's the funniest comic right now? And Red Fox answered, Flip Wilson. Flip who? Yeah, well, we're about to find out who Flip Wilson is, because once Red Fox mentioned him on there, guess who got booked on the Tonight Show? Mr. Flip Wilson, on Red Fox's recommendation that he was the funniest. So once you got the recommendation from him, he's got you on the show. Once you're on the Tonight Show, boom, you're a made comic. All right. So just off, the top of his head, just Red Fox thinking, who's the funniest guy I seen? Oh, hey, I seen this guy Flip Wilson at the Apollo. Bam, that's who I think's funny. And bam, oh, Mr. Wilson's an instant star. Became a fan favorite on the Tonight Show. Did reoccurring appearances. That led to the Ed Sullivan Show, one of the biggest shows at the time. Remember when the Beatles hit the Ed Sullivan Show? It was like the biggest thing ever. But yeah, the Tonight Show, the Ed Sullivan Show, these are like the iconic TV shows of the time, hitting all of America. Everybody stayed up to watch them, so everybody knew who you were if you got on them. This led to TV appearances on Here's Lucy, Laugh-In, the Dean Martin Show. These were all the big shows you wanted to get on. This like the Saturday Night Lives and the In Living Colors of the time. So the Joe Rogan podcast, the Funny Like a Clown podcast, these are the shows you want to be on. Well, back then it was Dean Martin's show. Here's Lucy, the Laugh-In. Oh, these were the names. Just to even be considered for these places was like comedy royalty. Let's see. Richard Pryor once told him, "You're the only performer I've ever seen who could go on stage and the audience hoped you liked them." See, because usually you're hoping the audience liked you, and in Flip Wilson's case, the audience was hoping Flip liked him. Because I guess if you didn't like you, you'd probably flip out. I guess I don't know. That's just a guess, but Yeah, it's an art form. To get an audience to like it, you got to take years to hone the craft and get your art down where you know how to handle any situation. You've seen it all. There's nothing an audience can pull that you haven't seen before. It takes years and years of practice to get that down. This guy was like a natural at it. So let's see. His routine Columbus from the Cowboys and Colored People album. I guess he'd act out this routine and caught the eye of Hollywood. Okay, which I mean, he's already on the Tonight Show as a comedian. He's big in the comedy world. What comes next? Acting comes next. I guess that routine, one of the when he was acting out on stage, one of the characters in it inspired the character that he later did, Geraldine, as we spoke of earlier, one of the all-time great characters that he did. And that's where he got that character. He became popular on Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In, another big popular show at that time. These are all the shows. If I could go back in time, any comedian go back in time, these are the shows you'd want to be on. This is where all the legends came from back then. Okay, did 2 animated TV specials. Once he got noticed by Hollywood, he's on Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In. These things are happening. All right, what's happening after that? He gets his own show. 1970, the Flip Wilson Show debuts on NBC. Um, and he he brought the people with him. He was the first, like I said, black superstar. What's the first black superstar going to do? He's going to take care of the black artists. He's going to bring them into your home, and once you get up there, you take care of your friends. Who are his friends? Well, he hosted many African American performers. You ever heard of these guys? Here's who he had on his show: the Supremes, the Jackson Five, the Temptations, Gladys Knight and the Pips, Red Fox, Bill Russell from the Boston Celtics, my personal favorite basketball team of all time. But he's giving back to the community. He's giving back to the black community. I got my break, and now I'm going to break through and show black artists can be just as good as any other artist. Okay, I mean, these are groundbreaking things for the time. Today it'd be looked at, yeah, anybody goes up, it don't matter. No, 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 not back then, boy. Back then he's breaking some ground. How big was he? You ever heard of George Carlin? Yeah, yeah. Well, George Carlin, he was one of the writers for the show. Okay, just like the Tonight Show of today and the Late Show, they have their comedy writers on there. Well, Flip Wilson had writers for the Flip Wilson Show. George Carlin was one of them. Hired him, and he also made regular appearances. I mean, he was a well-known comedian. Not as well-known. He went on to be, legend of comedy. Him and Pryor, the 1 and 2 comedians of all time. But back then he was a writer. And where did he get his break? Flip Wilson Show, baby. Um, let's see. Character's a big thing. If you can come up with a memorable character, and I'll go back to Taxi. Okay, that's a perfect example. They had Lodka. He was the foreign man. Okay, well, he was a comedian. He did that foreign man in many of his routines before he got put on TV. Jim Ignatowski, the drug addict, the guy who was out of it. Well, that was all a routine he did in comedy before they put him on TV. So if you can come up with a great character in comedy, Hollywood's going to come looking for you, man. That's what they're looking for, characters. Okay, they see thousands of funny people a day, but if you have a good character, that's what's going to sell on TV. I used to do a TV show myself, The Comedy Kitchen, and one of the guests came on, and I asked him to be on. He's like, "I'd be thrilled to be on." He came. He's like, "Why'd you ask me?" I'm like, "You're a character, man. I think Bob Glancy, Big Bob Glancy's a friend of mine, and." I said, "That's why I put you on. You're a character, Bob, and characters sell on television, and that's the truth." Well, some of Flip Wilson's characters: Reverend Leroy from the Church of What's Happening Now. And this was like groundbreaking stuff. I remember Saturday Night Live had the church lady. I think Dana Carvey did it, the church lady. Well, it all started back then. Reverend Leroy. Remember what Lenny Clark, he did a local when he first broke into local television, they let him do a show, but it was like too racy for local television at the time. He had the black news, and that's you can't do the black news back then. It was, on a national stage, maybe a Saturday Night Live that accepted. On the local scene, you got to tone it back a little bit. But hey, man, he made it there. He's on. He's got Reverend Leroy. He's got Geraldine and her boyfriend Killer. Okay, so which I remember these became national catchphrases, okay, because everybody's walking around calling their wife, "Hey, Killer, calm down, Killer." And it was like, I remember when Eddie Murphy, Delirious came out, me and my friend Mike, my best friend, we, just all day long, we'd be shooting references from that Delirious album at each other, and yeah, that's what makes you laugh. My friend now, Nate Thomas, up in Alaska, we're both Sam Kinison fans, and we're just constantly shooting like Sam Kinison quotes at each other. Okay, do you remember this one, man? Yeah, right. We call each other names from the album, but that's why comedy albums are great. You don't see that stuff anymore. Where back in the day, it was a common thing to do. Well, Flip Wilson, he had some of the biggest catchphrases of the time with the Flip Wilson Show. So how cool can you get after that? I don't know how cool you can get after that when you're at the top of your game. Ran from 1970 to 1974. How cool was it? Nominated for 11 Emmy Awards, and he won 2. If you can win 1 Emmy Award, you're pretty much shooting a good game. Okay, you win 2, get nominated for 11, you're doing something right. Golden Globe is the best actor in a TV series. Now, if you're getting a Golden Globe as the best actor, okay, and like I said, for the time, okay, this is a black guy beating out all the white guys. Okay, you didn't see that back then. Groundbreaking stuff. So, what brought us all the great African American performers of today? Well, this is the guy who was breaking some ground back then. So, hats off to him. It's a common thing nowadays. I mean, you bring in your friends. Well, he's going to bring in his friends, the guy that he grew up with at the Apollo, and now I'm going to show you some talent that I grew up with, and opened up a whole new door for what was going on over there. Let's see, did some TV movies, Uptown Saturday Night in 1976. Also that year, The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh, and TV's rendition of Pinocchio. So doing some TV, doing the characters, doing his own show. What else do you want? Later on in his career, he revised People Are Funny, which I believe was a game show. There was an earlier version on, I know, but he relived it. Like we said, how many Family Feuds has there been? How many versions of that? There've been like so many I can't even count. But hey, the great shows, you want to see him revive. So had his own CBS sitcom for a while, Charlie and Company. As in any career, you get old and you got to slow down after a while. In the later years, he did some cameos because people still remembered it for being the groundbreaking comic that he was. He was on Living Single in 1993 and the Drew Carey Show in 1996. Okay, which is always cool because you got to pay back. I mean, like I said, I'm a local comedian. I do some stuff, and if I ever had my dream come true, it would have been to work with Sam Kinison in a movie. He passed on, but Andrew Dice Clay. I mean, there's a guy, just have the opportunity to work with him. I seen recently Andrew Dice Clay got to work with. Oh, geez, no, I can't think of his name. Famous director there. Anyway, the famous director came calling, and he said to this day, I can't even believe I worked with him. And I'd be like that, if I got to work with Andrew, because these are the guys I grew up listening to, and he's making movies of the guys he grew up listening to. So, these are thrilling things happening. So Drew Carey, here's a guy who grew up watching Flip Wilson. Hey, I'm gonna get back, have him on my TV show years later. Odd facts you probably didn't know about him. I'm a big father's rights activist. I do my character, the child support superhero. We're coming out a movie for Amazon Prime later this year because I truly believe children deserve both of their parents equally. So look for it. It's called The World Needs a New Superhero. But here's a guy who was married twice, had 4 kids, okay, and in 1979, okay, he won custody of his kids, which it's tough enough nowadays for a guy to win custody of his kids. Back in 1979, unheard of. You go with the mother, okay? Guys don't get custody of the kids in 1979. He beat the odds. He got custody of the kids. And, here's a guy at the top of his comedy game, and he decided, you know what? I'm going to perform less than I normally do so that I can raise my kids and be there for them. So hats off to Flip Wilson, man. Good dad right there. You're at the top of your comedy game and take a step back. I remember Rodney Dangerfield did that too. And that's why he opened up Dangerfield's Comedy Club in New York so that he could have a home base and he could raise his kids from there rather than travel the country. There's no way he could have raised his kids traveling the country. So hats off to Flip Wilson, man. A good dad, a great performer, breaking ground in the comedy world. 1998, he finally passed away at the age of 64 of cancer, but not before leaving behind a groundbreaking comedy career. Bringing up people from the Apollo, some of the names I mentioned there. I mean, Michael Jackson from the Jackson 5 on the Flip Wilson show, getting his chance, getting his, all these entertainers, man. And this guy made it happen with good characters in comedy. And I guess I got to come up with a character in comedy. Well, I got the character, the child support superhero. Flip's got Geraldine. I got him. Hey, we're both making things. This is Funny Like Clown podcast. I hope you're enjoying it because, guys like Flip Wilson, man, they gave opportunity and I'm educating you on what's going on with these guys. Hopefully, we're breaking some ground here, and the young comics listen to the podcast and they probably don't know half of who these guys were. Well, if you listen to this podcast, you're going to find out. And if you want to be a good comedian, they say know the history of comedy, know what's been done before you. Because if you want to be a good doctor, you got to know the history of medicine. Okay, you want to be a good lawyer, you got to know the history of law. If you want to be a good comedian, know the history of comedy. We're making that happen right here on Funny Like a Clown podcast. I'm your host, Dennis Wirth. Until next week, we'll learn some more. Keep people laughing because laughter is the best medicine. As always, tell somebody a joke this week. Make them laugh.